Hello everyone. So today we're with Mr. Pasha Rayan. He's the co-founder and CTO at Forage, an edtech company that runs virtual training programs with world-leading companies to educate and recruit students. So Forage has till now raised over $11 million in funding from the likes of Y Combinator, Transition Level Investment, and Lightspeed Venture Partners. The startup, formerly known as Insight Sherpa, has been going really strong, and it is seeking to tear down the barriers between potential and opportunity. So today we'll learn about Pasha's journey to Forage, including his roles at freelancer.com and KPMG, and what he has learned along the way. We'll also learn about what Forage has to offer to students and basically what is the USP of Forage. So welcome, Mr. Pasha. And
Thank you.
I'll move it with my first question. So you have worked with freelancer.com and KPMG as a consultant. So what inspired you to be an entrepreneur, and what about being an entrepreneur excites you?
No, that's a great question. And I think what inspired us to be an entrepreneur was that as I worked through different companies like KPMG or Freelancer, I basically thought that, there are, for me, better ways for us to create impact and improve kind of the world, in a small way. So, I was lucky at KPMG where I worked with large companies to figure out how to improve their processes and their strategies and stuff like that. But, I didn't feel like I was helping someone. And when I was at freelancer.com, that was great because we were helping people around, the world kind of be able to support themselves in jobs. But I thought that was a bigger problem right now in education, really allowing anyone from any background to land amazing careers. And that's been something I've been working on for years. And I think for me, what kind of excites me about being an entrepreneur is that, one, I really like solving problems and creating things. And, at the end of the day, if you have a big problem that you want to solve and you want to create something to solve it, the best way to do that is to kind of go out there and create something yourself or, with a team of your co-founders. So that's why I think that's why I think being an entrepreneur is I think valuable to me and excites me. It's something that allows us to create something that solves a big problem that I really, really care about, which is helping students from any background land amazing careers. And then on the flip side, it allows us to actually apply all of our corporate technology product learnings in a way that we really just kind of makes the world better in this one particular way. So in the case of Forage, it was both education and recruitment. But yeah, that's kind of what excites us.
No, that's actually a great answer. Thanks, Pasha. So you mentioned that you'd like to help students basically. So that leads me to my second question. What inspired you to work in you wanted to be an entrepreneur, but entrepreneur in the edtech sector? What inspired you to work in this sector, and what keeps you connected to this sector basically?
Now, that's a really, when I think about edutech, it's easy to think, man, today as an industry, it's a lot more sexy than it used to be. But 3 or 4 years ago when we started Forage, then known as Insight Sherpa, it was not a sexy industry. And I think, I pulled back, we were trying to build a company. No one thought education was very cool for a long time, for a long time, people were like, your company will never be something that is venture backed or can kind of get off the ground. But, what inspired me is that, I think if I pull back and go to our mission, our mission is to allow any student from any background the ability to upskill and land careers. And the reason that mission matters a lot to me is because when I grew up in a single parent family and, not very well off. And I kind of landed into really cool jobs and careers because, I kind of knew a bit of Photoshop. I made a few good friends. I entered the right student groups, and I accidentally ended up in a place where I can kind of end up in cool careers. And I knew a lot of friends from the same schools as me that just didn't get that opportunity. And I wondered why, because it just didn't seem, it was just totally random. And I think, part of the reason why is that, a lot of people just didn't, a lot of people who don't come from those fancy backgrounds, they just don't know what jobs are out there. They don't know what it takes to land a job there. And they need kind of a bit of confidence and help around that. And that's kind of why the mission resonates with us. And then for us, the best way to drive that kind of change and solve that problem was mixing education and for us recruitment, because for us, it was an education problem. How many people at the age of 16 get a chance to see what it's like to work at Citibank or JP Morgan or EA Games or BCG or even the age of 20, right? Because usually like left to the people who are lucky enough to know the right person at that early age, or those lucky enough to land an internship. And it just seemed silly that way. There was no way to kind of like solve that. So, in terms of education, like that, the reason we're passionate about it is at a personal level, it's something that I think is really important to fix, because if we did solve this problem and allowed anyone to really upskill for all these different companies, right, with these practical skills, everyone can find the job that they want to work in. So you can not be confused. You don't spend 2 years being a consultant when you realize you don't want to be a consultant like me after like a bit of time there, and then work on things that it's going to be really impactful for you. But it allows people of all different backgrounds, regardless of where you're at, what school you go to, what country you're in, the chance to just show that you're good enough for the job. Because I think there's a lot of people who are good for the job or really good at doing the work, but they just never get a chance to shine. And I think that's what we want to solve at Forage. And that's, for us, is why edutech is kind of the key area, because that's how you start solving the problem. You don't solve the problem just by putting more students applying for jobs. You still solve the problem by teaching people, like whether they're doing their high school, their undergrad, their masters, what opportunities are out there, how to capture those opportunities in terms of jobs and skills, and then facilitating a way for them to land that job there. So that's kind of that's why edutech resonates with us.
Right. So when was Forage founded, and who were the co-founders, and what was the specific school of thought? I think you might have got the idea somewhere, where like you were with the co-founders and you got the idea. So what was the school of thought behind the business model of Forage specifically?
Yeah, so Forage was founded in 2017 with me and Tom Brunskill, my co-founder. So it's been 4 or 5 years now. It's a very long time for our company. If I pull back, I think, to the question about, what was the school of thought behind Forage? When we started Forage, we didn't start off with the virtual internship, virtual work experience platform. We started as a mentoring platform. And what we learned by talking to lots and lots of students was that there was a bigger gap in giving students the ability to try out work. And what we found was students, when they tried out what it's like to be a banker or a consultant or a venture capitalist or a civil engineer, people were more confident in applying to like those industries and also more confident in themselves. And when we found that, we realized that this is the best way to train people up and get people excited for different jobs and careers. And that's kind of like, that was the genesis of like how we started with Forage. And I think it was like, how do we, and what we realized is companies also want to find people that are different, different backgrounds, different, like schools, wherever they're from. They wanted to find the best talent. They want to find diverse talent. And what we found was that, like companies were also kind of excited at this point in time to kind of start trying this out. And that's kind of how we started. We started Forage, on this insight that we realized that, we can really help students out by letting them try work out with the companies that we partner with. And that I think, that's kind of where we are now. I think we're just kind of lucky. We've been lucky to kind of get us there, but yeah.
I think that was a really, really innovative business model. Like I really like the business model of Forage, since it's actually, it aggregates the industry and the students at a platform where they can both help each other. So I really like the business model.
And
so,
sorry, go on.
Yeah, you go on, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, and one of the things is like, our business model is structured to be free for students and learners. Yeah. So like, what we realized was that the best way to kind of solve this problem was to allow anyone, anytime to work on these kind of skills. And what we learned was that, we could actually create a good business off by working with the companies and charging them to host their stuff on our platform, because we added more services, more quality to them. Because like that allowed us to really kind of like both solve kind of two birds with one stone. One is allowing the access of opportunity and education, and there's upskilling. And then on the flip side, allows us to fund more R&D, research and development, more innovation to make the whole product and ecosystem better for more students.
Right. I'm sure, Pasha, I'm sure that lots of thousands of Indian students who don't actually know about Forage would actually know about it from this particular interview. So my next question is, how would you describe the products and services of Forage to them in the most simple language that they can understand, basically?
Awesome. Well, the way to explain Forage is, Forage is a website that you can log on to, and when you log onto it, you can find all of these companies around the world, like Boston Consulting Group, EA Games, Deloitte, KPMG, and you could basically do courses, do these virtual work experience programs, which are online courses that reflect what a graduate does at that company, but in your own time and in your own pace. So when you log on, you get 3 to 5. It's a 3 to 5 hour course, and you log in and you get to see 4 or 5 tasks that specifically reflect what you do when you start there. So in the KPMG program, the first task is to clean up a data set, because like when I was started at KPMG, that's one of the first things that you do. You don't go straight to the fancy analysis like you do in class or the academic theories. It's like clean up the data set, find the insights, and then send that across to your potential client. And these are all simulations that kind of reflect what you do there. So same as in investment banking, you get the stats and the right kind of financial ratios, and that gets you set up to kind of succeed as a banker and whatnot. The reason this is really valuable for students is because you actually gain real skills that the companies will hire for and want to hire for. B, if you do well, you get highlighted to the company's recruiters. And C, we've got these amazing stats where students who have completed or have done the program are more than twice as likely to land a job with the companies than if not doing the program. So we have some firms, giant investment banks, where a large percent, 20 to 30% of their graduate cohort is coming from Forage. I've done a Forage program. Some firms have found that compared to an average applicant, a Forage student is 3 times more likely to 4 times more likely to land a job. Managers like students that do Forage because they're talking to students who understand the work itself rather than students who are just kind of airy-fairy and theoretical. So there's a great benefit for you to see what work is like, try out different careers in a safe online environment, and then actually improve your chances of landing jobs with some of these amazing companies around the world.
Right. I think that was a really holistic answer. So you have covered pretty much everything. So yeah, thank you for that. And my next question is the edtech market right now is in a boom. So there are a lot of competitors. I say new companies, I even don't know all of the companies. So how does Forage basically differentiates itself from everyone else?
It's an interesting question. I think one of the things is we try not to get too distracted by our competitors and other people in the space, because what we really know is that if we help students upskill, get a sense of these different companies and help them land a job there and allow anyone to do that, I think we have a unique product and proposition that really can stand out and out there. I think, in terms of how we are different, we don't charge students. I think, we don't charge students because we know not everyone can afford it. And I think, going back to the mission, for us, it's really allowing anyone the ability to kind of land those jobs. So we make it a key point of us that, that we don't charge students. And that, it's funny because I also know that there are definitely students where if they paid some money, they're probably more likely to complete the program and stuff. But we know that ultimately the main thing is making sure that we have access of opportunity to everyone. I guess one of the other things is we work directly with the companies. We're not doing this thing where it's we're using theory to kind of match it. It's no, we worked and talked to the heads of recruitment at our partner companies, like JP Morgan, BCG, Deloitte, any of these type of, we talk to the heads of recruitment to understand what their biggest problems are. So we don't do anything we don't fluff around. We just are doing the things that help students land jobs at these companies. So that's another way we kind of are different. We're not here to kind of and we're not a theoretical tool. We're not here to teach you the theory of certain topics. It's very practical. So I think, if I were to say how we differentiated, we have a unique business model that allows us to have access to everyone. We work directly with the companies. We don't do anything. We're not in between. We're not doing anything in between. It's like directly to the companies. And then, like it's very practical. It helps you land real skills that land you real jobs rather than theoretical stuff. So that's kind of how we are different. And I think, and I think, that's different to like how everyone else maybe like be working on their education companies. Because I think for us, that's the core part that makes us really relevant to students around the world.
I think that was a really straightforward answer. So I've got like the Forage is basically application oriented and it's free for all. So I think that's really cool. So yeah. And my next question is particularly in the same line. So post-COVID, there has been a lot of boom in the edutech sector. And we have seen that the revenues and the users base has increased heavily. So my question is, like after things are sorted and the impact of COVID has become less, do you see that will this boom sustain itself or will it fall? What do you think the future for the edutech sector holds post-COVID?
I think that's a really interesting question because in different parts of the education sector, it'll be very different. I think there are two parts of that. For universities in general, I think students love seeing other students after COVID. I've been lucky enough to be in a place where we've seen lockdowns and then we've seen opening up. And I think, there's just something magical about seeing other people and learning with other people in person. So I don't think that will ever go away. I do think there might be like a substitute or parallel learning thing now where students might be doing things parallel online and in person. So I think that's one thing that's quite interesting. So I think that's the first point. I don't know. I think the companies that can kind of work in that parallel manner are the ones that can do well, because like universities aren't going to disappear. I think they're still such an important part of like the ecosystem. And it's hard to train millions and millions of people up, to be tertiary education. So I think that's a fascinating thing. But I think parts of it will stay and parts of it will kind of grow more and parts of it will kind of like only be temporary. I think the parts that are temporary are like maybe like kind of the online classes part of it because people will want to come back in person. The parts that will probably sustain and kind of remain are the bits that are parallel to like that in-person experience. And the parts that will boom are the ones who use a mix of technology to kind of like teach better. So I think for us, we're lucky that I think technology enables students to do more. And you couldn't really deliver what we do at Forage without the technology. So I think that's kind of what makes us stand out in this kind of changing world. But I don't think it's I think I think that's kind of what I would say is on that front. That's kind of how I think that mix of both where it might go down, where it might sustain, and might grow as well.
Right. I think that's a very genuine and interesting perspective on this. So the next section is for you specifically. So how has the journey has been so far for you, for us, and what are the plans that you and your team hold for the future of Forage?
That's a fun question. For those who are interested in running startups one day, starting a startup is tough. I think it's a really, really interesting journey because, like, as I said earlier, like not everyone believes in you on day one. And that's always quite fun, right? People were like, what are these two, founders doing trying to do a startup based on internships and education? Like who cares about that? When fintech was crazy and everything was crazy, right? So I think part of it is like, that was always an interesting kind of like thing to work through. And I think we've been lucky that we've been able to get this far right now. And I think, one of the things that keeps us going is that we just always hear amazing stories of students. We have students who are single mothers who are able to do virtual work experiences because of Forage, because they can't do it during the day. They can't do work experience during the day because they're taking care of their child. We're seeing students in Italy landing jobs in Hong Kong. We're seeing students in America, diverse backgrounds landing jobs, from like firms hiring from schools that they never hired for. Students in India being able to like take the next step of their career because of the programs that we have on Forage. We have, students in South Africa who are the first in their family kind of like to land a job with like law firms because of like us. And I think there's so many amazing stories of like, and that keeps us going, I think it's amazing that we can kind of wake up every morning and work on a company that has this helpful impact. And not only is it like, feel good, but they're actually more employable, they're ready to take on the future, and also in a way that's accessible. So we're not trying to cut out anyone on this front. So that's kind of been really fulfilling of Forage. And in terms of plans for the future, what we really do want to do is allow us to really, teach and upskill our students more. So, things that we are working on that I think are really cool and can't wait to kind of show everyone out there are like how we give more tailored, actionable feedback for students on our platform. How do we make you as good as a graduate investment banker at JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs with our website rather than having someone look over your shoulder? The other thing, that we're really excited about is how do we get more people employed? We're working closely with our companies to help them go, hey, this student has spent 3 to 5 hours understanding, the company, its culture, its work, what makes it special. You should talk to them more. You should prioritize them over other candidates. And, we're working on a lot of that stuff. I think that's super exciting. And really, it's like, how do we actually, reach into more industries, So we started very much in the professional services space. We've got law, management consulting, investment banking. But, we launched our first program with EA Games, which is, it makes like, all this, it makes like Battlefield and like the games that we play every day if you're a gamer, right? Like, and we've got civil engineering companies on there. We've got different companies jumping on board. And I think that's why it's super exciting on that front. Like, we're expanding it out more and, and we're working to kind of make it more relevant to students in different backgrounds at different places. So, I think there are some really cool things that we have in our future, because really our goal is to be that place where regardless of who you are, you can really just upskill, learn, figure out how to land a job, and then, find a fulfilling career for like your skill set and your interests and your passions, and deliver that hiring advantage and deliver that learning advantage for the real world.
Right. Thank you for your answer. Personally, I feel that, like you mentioned, the future for Forage could be like the scope is really huge, both from the company's perspective and both from the students' perspective. So my last question, in order to conclude the interview, and it's continuation with your answers. So you mentioned that your students are diverse. There are single mothers, there are students from India, Africa, everywhere. So right now in this COVID era, they must be facing like somebody would be in online college, or somebody would just have completed school online. So what piece of career advice or life advice would you like to offer to them based on your experience?
Yeah, it's always a fun one. I think there's kind of 2 bits of advice three, but like, I'll start with the main 2. Like, the first thing is, for a lot of students out there, they don't know what they want to do for their career, right? And that's totally normal and totally fine, because it's a hard decision to make. And there are people out there who know what they want to do, and I think they're really lucky. And this advice isn't for you if you know what you want to do for the next 5 years of your life. But for a lot of people, it's okay to learn what you should do in the next 5 years in your life, after you graduate or as you're studying, by process of elimination. So you should, try out different jobs and different careers if you can, and figure out what you don't want to be. Because I think that might save you 2 years of your career. Then you can kind of be spending more time getting better at the one industry that you can really shine at. So that's the first point. And I think for us, Forage is kind of built like that, where I started my career as a consultant, but really I could have learned very quickly that I didn't really want to be in that kind of space. And not to say it was a bad experience, and I learned a lot from it. But, we also built Forage so that you could try out, see what it's like to be a banker or a consultant or software engineer, and then realize that that's not for you. You can, save yourself 2 years of 3 hours of work. So that's the first bit of advice, because that's a huge anxiety that I know a lot of students have. The second bit of advice I have is that, definitely with career things and stuff at university, have a lot of fun at university, but don't take it take it seriously and get the good marks and everything else. It's still a unique time in your life where you can both spend some time learning and having fun with different people and like learning from different kind of like groups of students. I think being curious and inquisitive kind of goes a long way on that front. I think that is really I think is like valuable for a lot of students, because I think some students either take it too seriously or too lightly, but I think it's, take it seriously, but like have fun during that time. Even though it is online, I think this is the thing, right? It's even more important now because, like that's if if you are doing courses online, everyone else is in the same spot. So, everyone else I'm sure would like some cohort and friends that, are going to have fun, with you and learning rather than something to stay over serious because like there's no reason, because you feel like you have to. And I guess the third piece of advice is that, take up opportunities that you can, do the internship if you can, do one. We find that they correlate with more success. The reason we made Forage is because it really does give you an advantage when in the hiring process. So, jump into Forage and do the things that do give you an advantage that, right? So do some work, do some extra work, do some projects on the side, do the Forage courses to kind of really stand out. Like these are kind of things that, we think quite deeply about and how we help students more. And there's still so many students that don't do Forage. There's so many students that don't get that internship that like taking that extra step really does stand out. Does help you stand out. And I think, that's for anyone that's listening to this call or listening to this or reading this, doing that extra mile, extra internship, extra Forage program, extra project on the side really helps you get to the next level.
Right. I think that was a really cool answer, and it was really helpful too. Especially, I think the first part, a lot of Indian students face that. It's like a major pandemic too for us, for Indian students. We are not able to decide which career to pursue. So I think that was a really cool answer.
Yes, process of elimination is usually much easier than figuring out what you need to do sometimes. And I think, especially with careers at a young age, like if you open up a spreadsheet for finance and you just do not want to figure out what the next number is, then like maybe it's not for you, and that's okay. Maybe you like programming, or maybe you like design or something else. But like that's probably one of those things. Yeah.
That's it. Okay. So that's all from me. If you'd like to add anything else, you can just go on, or we can stop.
I'll probably just let if you get the chance to sign up for Forage, give it I think it only takes a few minutes to kind of go www.theforage.com, find a program by companies that are interesting, and then from there go out and try things out. We built this for you. Feel free to always send us messages on LinkedIn or a support chat and suggestions on how we make it better for you. You get a certificate when you complete a program on Forage. You gain real skills taking some of that time out there will really help us, because the more students we help out, the more excited we are with working on Forage, and it helps you kind of get to the next level. So that's kind of the last thing I'll add there.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Pasha, and thank you everyone for watching this video.